How to combine 3D and AI. This is the point of this tutorial. I will explain how to install Stable Diffusion at the beginner level, how to plug in different modules, and how to set up a simple scene in Blender that will work in combination with Stable Diffusion. Every software we are using here is free. You just need like a recent gaming laptop, ideally 3-4 years old, because we do need an NVIDIA video card to run it on. In this particular case, I want to create a showroom for a prop, and you can apply this to any idea of your own. It doesn't have to be like a medieval room, like in my case. It can be sci-fi. So let's start and enjoy the course. Let's go and install Stable Diffusion Web UI. So for that, we need to go to github.com, automatic 1111 Stable Diffusion Web UI. Then we can scroll down to see the installation instructions for Linux, Windows, and Apple. I'm using Windows. So we need to install Python and we need to install Git. If I click on Python, we just need to scroll down to the bottom, find the Windows installer, standard installation, nothing custom. Same thing for the Git. I click on Git link here and we just go for Windows 64-bit setup. Download the executable and follow the standard instructions. Just click OK all the way. The next thing I need to do, I will go to my C drive and I'll right click, create a new folder for our Stable Diffusion. Then I need to click on the URL section and type in cmd, the command line. Then I need to go and copy this line right here, git clone down to the end, Control V, paste it right here and press enter. And that now is going to run and download all the files that we need. Now we have the folder. We need to go and run WebUI user.bat. Just double click on that. And it's also going to run a few commands here. Download some packages. Don't worry about it, just give it some time. After waiting for a few minutes, and it can take you like 10, 15, 20 minutes because it's downloading a lot of files, we got the web UI opened. It is, however, looking white. So if we want to make it a cool dark mode, we can do it pretty easily. We need to go back to our main folder with Stable Diffusion. Right click on web UI and user.bat and click edit. Now we have this notepad where I can just type in what I need. That is --theme space dark, Control S to save it, and let's run it again. Just double click on web UI user.bat. And there you go, we have the dark theme. I can Control Tab, even switch between them. I have two of them open right now, but I will carry on with dark themed automatic 1111. When we start Stable Diffusion, you may or may not have this model already preloaded, version 1.5. However, at this point of time, while I'm recording this tutorial, there is already a new model which is 3.5. It is on a Hugging Face, and you can see this link. You do need to create an account to download this model, and I've logged in. Then I need to switch to Files and Versions, scroll down to the list of files, and here I can see this file .savetensors, which we need to download. There are multiple models currently available for download. You can see 3.5 large turbo, and medium. Medium is the best for consumer hardware, so it will still create your good results and will not kill your video card. Also, medium model is smaller, it's at 5 gigs, while large turbo is 16 gigabytes and regular large is also 16 gigabytes. My model I got from a website called CivitAi or CivitAi.com. Here they post a whole bunch of models created by the users. They're all for free. You can pick any and download it. I actually went and picked Epic Photogasm, and then I just pressed download. We need to go to Stable Diffusion folder, to models, then pick Stable Diffusion and paste the downloaded model right into this folder. You can see the extension called .savetensors. That extension is an identifier that it was virus checked and there is no dodgy stuff in the file. I'm back at Stable Diffusion. So you do want to click here on refresh so that it will go and scan the models folder. I already have a NASA model I downloaded before, and then we have our Epic Photogasm. Every time I press on a new model, it takes some time to download it and update it in the web UI, usually a few seconds, but if the file is big, it can take like 40 seconds. Finally, we can do our first prompt. You can type in like medieval room, click generate, a super simple prompt without much detailing. We will be introducing a lot more. And it created our image. Every time I generate an image, it gets saved. And if you want to change this path of saving, the particular folder you want to use, you just copy paste it here and then click reload UI and you will get it updated. This image, we can't really control it. We can change the prompt, but we'll morph again into something else. To control the output, we need to install ControlNet. Let's go extensions, click on available. Then I clicked on load from and I got a list of extensions that are available to be downloaded and installed. Press Ctrl F, go search for sd-web UI-controlnet. And I'll just push it down, find the second search result of SD Web UI ControlNet. And here we go, we have it. And I just need to click install. Let's create our showroom. So inside the Blender 4.3, slightly different from previous versions of Blender, and go Shift A and I will create a cube. So I want to create a cube. I want to make it a real proportions. So 2 by 2 meters is about right. I just want to scale it out, say 2 by 4 meters. So let's type it in. And then press tab to go inside edit mode. I'll press 3, which is my hotkey to pick the faces. We can also pick the faces or vertices at the top. Then I press delete to delete and pick the faces to delete. So now we have our shell, which if I pick it and move it away, can create a bit more depth. And then I will go Shift A, create a new cube, and I want to decorate our room. So I'm pressing G to move this, pressing S to scale it on different axes, Shift D to move it across, Shift D, and I want these guys to fill up the room, so they go a bit more infinite. I might consider to add a bit of ceiling here, so I will go picking the edges, click that one, shift click this one, and Ctrl R to create a new edge loop. And I use my middle mouse button, scroll and add a bit more divisions. And then I pick this guy, the middle guy, and go with the proportional editing. I can now push this all together. If I press G and use the middle wheel, I can scroll it up and down and press Z to go up in the axis that I need. So I'm creating this little arched ceiling. Then I press 1 for vertex selection. I actually want to go into the transparent mode, so then I can pick all the visible and invisible vertices. Press G, move it down, and I have my cage. By accident, I hit on the floor. So again, here press Z to enter the wireframe mode and pick all the vertices at the bottom. Turn off proportional editing and G and Z plus 0 to scale it down to 0. Now I have a flattened floor. Let's go back, turn off the transparency mode, which helps to select the back faces and back vertices. And I will just Shift D plus R to rotate, Shift rotate to snap the rotation, press S to make it bigger again, to scale it up. And I want to create another part there, press S and Z to scale it upwards. We create a little, very minor decorations. Just something there because we want to give AI ability to think a little bit for itself. One thing I want to add a bit of bevel to all the shapes. So press Shift click on each one of them, press Tab, and everything's already selected. So I'll go Control B to add a bevel, and I just add a little bit of a smooth beveling. We can see that beveling here wasn't happening accurately because this object has been scaled on one axis, so it's not like a uniform scaled object. And to fix that, I have to, well, basically, let's go undo this, press Tab, and go Control A, apply scale. That will apply the scale transform, and it will fix the scale. So now it's a uniform 1:1:1 scale. I'll press Tab, go Control B, and now I can get a bit of these softer shapes because Stable Diffusion does prefer to deal with softer shapes, and I feel like projection might look a bit better if there's some wiggle room for when we will start doing the texture projection with cameras. It will be helpful to have slight softness here. I think this guy as well looks a little bit too jagged, that line, so I can just pick all these guys together and I will bevel, and I'm using my middle wheel to get a round amount of divisions. So I've got a few divisions running. I have now a nice curve. And maybe I'll just add this columns at the end over there and move these guys across. So instead of that, recreating that on the right, I will just move it and duplicate this model there. I think maybe it doesn't have enough depth. I would just go and scale it in one direction. And Control A, apply the scale transform. I want to position my camera now. So where's my camera? It's somewhere there. It's the default one. I will press G. And by the way, I'm pressing Alt-Shift every time I'm rotating. And Alt-Shift snap. Snaps to the viewport, left, right, top, and front. So let me rotate this guy around. Actually, let me go into these settings here. Just click and drag and type in a 0. So now I know that my camera isn't under some kind of funny angle. Press R, press Control, snap rotate, and we have it. To make sure we are in the right position, I have to go into View and Cameras, set active object as camera, and then go into the View and lock camera to view. You can see the part where where we see the room is pretty tiny, that camera gate. So if I press home, it will bring this camera gate to the full screen. So then I press rotate my middle mouse wheel, press shift to just position this camera in the best possible way. I think I want to change my camera settings. So click here on the little camera, and I want to change the focal length to something a bit more dramatic, like 24. So that gives us a bit more breathing room. We can even go 18. This is basically how they photoshoot all those properties, or all the real estate properties. They like to go with super wide angle lens and make everything look much bigger than it actually is. So you can play around with the values and find the one you like. We need to do a little preparation for our render settings. I'll go into output and put 50% here. It will double down the resolution, and the lower resolution, the faster it renders in Stable Diffusion. So it is quite important. Then we want to render out a depth path. The depth path will show the nearest objects towards us in white pixels, and the furthest objects away in black pixels. It also can be called a Z depth. So here in data, I just click here on Z depth to get rendered, and then we can switch to compositing. I go to compositing tab. You probably will not see these nodes. You have to click on use nodes for them to show up. Let's go click render image. And right now we can't really see anything. We don't actually have the lights on there, and it really doesn't matter. So I press spacebar, look for viewer. Viewer node. That will show our render from before. And we have our depth path. If I go back to our view layer and I click on Z and unclick on Z, you can see the depth path appears and disappears. So I can just go drag it down and it will give us a little preview. Right now it's all totally white. To fix the image, spacebar, look for the map range. Can I drag it over our line, insert it, and then we have to play with the values. So basically I go and drag this slider and try to find some value that will give enough information for Stable Diffusion to work with. Not a bad idea to go into the render settings, whole way down to color management and view transform. I want to change it from filmic to raw. That gives us more bit of a gradient and more gradient variation. Can be quite useful for Stable Diffusion. Sometimes Stable Diffusion can interpret too much darkness as a place been really far away. And in that case, we can play with the look here and we can change the contrast settings, low contrast, medium. Bear in mind that even though as a human eye can't really see the detail too much, Stable Diffusion will be able to pick it up. But I will go with just none for now. Let's connect our map range to the image and then go render the image. So there we go, we have our final render and we want to save it. So image, save as, and I create a new folder called PNG. I save it at 16 bits and I want a zero compression. We don't need any further compression. And let's call this like a room depth path 01 and save this image. There's a little pro tip. I'm actually using Photoshop, but if you want to use a free software, there's a PhotoPea. It is an online copy of Photoshop and you don't even need to log in. I click here, like open from computer, look for my render, double click on that. And what I want to do is blur it using a Gaussian blur, and that will add a bit of suggestivity for the render for Stable Diffusion. It really helps. So I'm just doing like 2 pixels, 2.5 pixels of smoothing, and you can do different amount of blurriness and try that all later in Stable Diffusion. And then we can just go export as PNG, gives you the window how to save it, and just press save. Time to have fun. The tedious installations and blockouts are over. First of all, we want to drop our image that we've created in Blender. Just click drag and drop here. Then I want to change the resolution, otherwise it will try to render it as a square. So it's 960 by 540. And by the way, the image I've dropped, it's not a smooth image, just the straight export from Blender. Then we can type in a prompt. I will say something very simple, medieval room with window in the back. And before we click generate, we have to go and click enable of the ControlNet, otherwise it will not do anything. And then we have to change our preprocessor to depth Zoe. Depth Zoe, in my experience, showed the best results, so I will stick to it. Other depth processors can give some bizarre results. Then important options to consider, and we have quite a few options, but we only need to play with a few. I want the control weight to go down to like 0.7. That gives a bit more creativity to the prompt, to the generation. If it's 1, it will try to adhere to the stuff it sees and can sometimes give very ugly results. Then I want to change seed to 10. That will mean that it's not going to generate a new image every time I have the same prompt. And let's just click here, control type to depth, and let's just click generate. Sometimes it will take you only a few seconds, and sometimes it will take longer. You can pull up the command prompt window from the bottom bar and see the progress for yourself. It is advisable to do like a computer reset to run it. It will run on a fresh restarted computer, it will run faster. But it all comes down to your video card and how much VRAM you have. And here, this is the result I got. I really don't like it. A funny thing happened. At one point, for some reason, depth processor changed to meters. And meters gives weird results, so I always switch to Zoe. It's a good thing to point out if you start to get something weird. and not controllable, maybe the depth profile is wrong, depth processor. So here I've put another prompt. I'm getting somewhere. This is the result I found satisfactory. You can see my prompt, first of all, says medieval dungeon room, black, simple Gothic window. If it wasn't simple, it would create like 4 or 5 of them. Then all broken walls and floor, wooden ceiling with wooden beams. If I didn't put wooden beams, it sometimes wouldn't generate the wooden ceiling. And for some reason, 18mm lens did help with the look, made it look more realistic versus non-realistic from before. I don't know why that helps, but that's the way it works. Then I used an image that was even more blurred, so I blurred it like 6-7 pixels on Gaussian blur scale. You can see here I have the control weight set to 0.7. It gave me a good amount of detail and originality to it. Let's talk about recreating the previous results, right? So every time you create something, you want to save that information. If you have to go to settings and go to saving images and grids, and right now I already have it, add extended info, see the prompts to file name to EXIF information of the file. Then click apply settings, and now every time you generate an image, it will be saved with information in the file. And to retrieve that information, we need to go to PNG info. So drag and drop one of the images I've created, and you can see immediately we have our prompt. Then I say send to text to image. It recreated the resolution, the prompt, but not the ControlNet. So the ControlNet we still have to redo by hand, which is a little bit annoying, but that's the way it works. And I have to drag and drop depth image again. Make sure you don't make a mistake here. And then if I run generate, and you know what? I actually did a mistake. The depth was set to meters, so it creates us quite a different image. It's kind of cool, but weird. Let me go change depth to Zoe, generate again. And with that, I got the image I wanted. To improve the resolution, we can run an upscaler. So here, if I click on enable high-res fix and unscroll this, it will double our resolution, and there are different upscalers. So each upscale gives us different result. I will be using just Latent. There is also Swing area for X, which I try to use. You basically just go click generate and it will run at a double resolution. It will require a lot more memory on your video card. I do have to do a clean computer restart and then run the generations, otherwise it will tell me that I'm out of memory on my video card. Here I have my latent upscaling and I have swing upscaling. So the detail is a bit different. You can see it actually recreated the image and changed a lot of details. If you want to keep more of the details, you need to change the denoising strengths. So I'll go to like 5. Again, if I drop it too much, it will give me somewhat of weird results. And also it's much longer, right? It can take 5-10 minutes, depending on your system, to generate an upscaled image versus just seconds on a low quality. So here I changed the denoising settings from 0.7 to 0.5, and it gave me a very different look compared to this one, 0.0. I like to upscale using Krea.ai tool. It is a free tool with like a limited use, right? So we can upload, say, 5-10 images and run upscale on already upscale Stable Diffusion. So we do need to sign up and create an account. Then I go to enhance and let me just drag and drop our image. Now on my left hand side, I have the image I've imported. I cannot do a 2x generation. However, I can do just 1x, and this already will improve my scene. Click on the button and I just have to wait. And now I have this before and after comparison. I'm not, to be honest, too sure that this new creation is better. I think actually worse, but we can run the different upscale and I can go to upscale methods and say like clarity. I can drop clarity there, resemblance, and run enhance at this setting. I think new variation is better. Still not too convinced if I want to trade the old version for the new version. Some things I like the ceiling, maybe the windows got a bit more definition. The floor is interesting, but the side walls are pretty bad and we are losing that warmth that I'm not too happy about it. I think it's important to mention this tool if you want to upscale your stuff and to add some details because it can work pretty well in certain cases. CreaAI is especially useful if your computer cannot do upscaling on your own. So for example, here I'm dropping my 1000 pixel image into the upscaler. I'm getting my 2K render out, and I think it's actually doing a pretty nice job overall. I want to go through gallery of failed tests just to show that it does involve a lot of trickery and prompt engineering and settings engineering and changing the settings to get a nice result. Sometimes I forget to change the depth from Midas to Zoe. If I don't put a window inside the room, the lighting goes to look quite weird. So immediately see here, I put in the prompt to put a window behind, and the lighting got from kind of fake weird one to a lot more natural, very natural, realistic lighting. Then I was trying to achieve like a wooden ceiling, and also I'm playing with different settings of the ControlNet from 0.7 to 0.8 and constantly change and change and change. Going, ControlNet goes up, it's less variation. ControlNet goes down, it's a bit more freedom. And I was just trying to get that realistic look. Some of this are not too bad, and especially considering the ability to do the upscaling in other software. I can drop it in Krea AI and upscale this pretty nicely and then reuse it. Sometimes we'll get some weird holes, like you can see on the right, there's a black hole. It's bizarre. Or I have this weirdish window. One thing you can see though, the moss, I actually did prompt it a mossy floor in the prompts. Then I did mention a castle in a different prompt, and I got a castle in the background. Just, the left and right walls, they look very like a cheap game type. Some other prompt tests here. Sometimes just playing around with the number of windows. And here I jumped back to Stable Diffusion model from Epic Photogasm. It gave me this result. However, it's kind of looking cool, but at the same time, it was less controllable than the Epic Photogasm, so I switched back to Epic Photogasm. And here, I think I was trying next day. This is my depth switch to Midas, and I forgot about it, so I had to switch it to Zoe again. I was also telling the windows like simple window, a medieval window, a Gothic window, a simple Gothic window. It all came from prompts and variations. You can see right now I have like a frame. I don't know why this frame started to appear. To remove that frame, I started to put a frame in the negative prompts, but eventually it went away. Like putting a 18mm lens helped a lot with the realism of the scene. Again, I don't know why. Bit of a black box there when we play with that. Some failed prompts here again, right? And then I start to improve. I try, and it's suddenly starts to look worse, starts to look better. Very often it has to do with the ControlNet steps 0.7, 0.8, 0.6, 0.5. I try all that. I also tried blurring the image. I did blurring the depth image that came from Blender a lot by 5 pixels by 10 by 15. I kind of was blurring it a lot. I was even adding some noise, like monochromatic noise, to see how that would break it. Because it can help. It does indeed help Stable Diffusion if the edges of the image are not too consistent. And of course, it will be a problem if you're trying to do a rendering animation, because then it will start to go and be all vague from frame to frame. But in our case, we're just trying to get one nice render out, and our animation will come for free in Blender at real-time speed. Here, I don't know why I got this just black line through it. I just had to change ControlNet and regenerate. I did like 200-300 prompts generations. One of the reasons I was doing them like for tutorial, I could also like Photoshop some stuff, right? I can merge few variants together to get a better result. However, I wanted to show in this tutorial how to get just a actual export without retouching anything. But retouching is always an option, so don't forget about it. This was a rather nice dungeon. Wooden ceiling was giving me trouble. It often didn't want to create a wooden ceiling. I had to say like specific like wooden ceiling of these beams, and then it would introduce a full-on wooden ceiling. There's some nice examples here. And then I said like landscape mountains. I started to get these mountains in the background. Or I said the white sky and painted all the walls to be white. Back in Blender, I'll pick an object and I want to create a material. In your case, it should be material 01, but in my case, it's already done a few materials, so it's 03. And then I pick all the objects except for this guy. So this guy, control deselected, has to be the last one. And then when I click Control L, I say link materials, and each object now has the same material. And if I apply different texture, it will be applied to all of these objects. I do want to change the surface material to background. So that background material is very, very simple. It doesn't have any shading to it, no specularity, no shadows. And that's what we need because we already have all our lighting happening on the image, on the photo that we generated in Stable Diffusion. Now go into shading. It already shows our background material as spacebar, image texture, and go look for our final render. So I found it, then I'll just drag the color to color output in background. And now we have our projection. Our image looks very dark, so we need to change this color space. I will go into the render, scroll all the way down to color management and change the raw, which we had used for the depth, to AGX to get nice render. I can see certain issues with the projection. It's all skewed and such. We can fix that. For that, I need to pick all my meshes again, and we need to add more geometry to it. Right now, the geometry is too low for good projection. Pick that stuff up and press A, and then subdivide and do it again and do it again and do it again. Now it's getting a bit heavy. That should be good enough. And project the UVs from view again. I have to go first set view to camera and then pick everything else. Press tab, press A to pick everything. It's already picked. And go UV, project from view. That will restore the issues. If I press home, you can see now it's getting better overall. I do see the back window, right? The back window is wobbly because there's not enough geometry on the back. To fix that, I'm just picking this room, going into the invisible mode, pass-through mode, delete all the faces. I will just use one of these boxes. I will stretch it out. I do need to project from my camera again. Press tab, press A, and project. We were building the room to create a showroom and to find an object. You can find them on many different platforms. I like to use Sketchfab because here we have a very, very nice 3D preview. I have a very large library of everything imaginable there. There's also a shop where we can just look for a medieval statue. And there are a few museums here on Sketchfab that upload this stuff free to use. A lot of these models are actually downloadable. Some of them are not. You have to go and look at the bottom information. You can see here, download 3D model. A pretty nice model to download and use. After looking for a while, I found the statue of Saint Andrew, or some kind of scholar. And you can see it mentions the license here. It's in public domain. So let's just go download it. You do need to create an account if you want to download this model. So I'll go pick my file format and we need OBJ. It will also include the textures. I got the archive, need to right click and extract it here. I can even delete it now. Then I go inside the source and there's another zip. I unzip that. And also we check the textures. The textures haven't been zipped. I go inside Blender, file, import, OBJ, and we pick our OBJ. So press G, move this around. Looks like it's not exactly in the right position or right scale. So let me rotate and put it in place as to scale, move it around there. And we do need to connect the textures. So I'll go into the shading, go look for image texture, Control C, Control V, Control C, Control V. For 3 image textures that we need to find. Go open a color texture, and I can go hook it up to base color. And immediately we can see we have our texture on. Our roughness texture, which will be responsible for all the reflections and reflectivity of the surface, which I want to connect to roughness. And then a normal map, which will create more surface detailing on this object. This one. Do need to hook up through a normal map node. This one, I go into color. And then this one will be connected to normal map. And don't ask me why we have to do that, but unfortunately we do. I want to do some color matching because right now it looks like the statue doesn't belong to this room. It has to kind of receive the colors that are bouncing from the walls, from the window, all that kind of pinkish, warm, yellow light. And I can just introduce a hue and saturation node that can allow us to shift the hue into, like, say, slightly more pinkish, and I can drop the saturation, and I can drop the value to make it darker. And it can take us some time to get combination of all these values to get the object look like it belongs. And we don't have the shadows right now, so that makes it look a bit fakish, but we will deal with that in a second. This is, I think, good for now. I feel like it might need to be scaled a bit more. Then I will create a light. Say I'll go for point light, place it over there, and activate the Eevee Studio. Starts to add us some light, and I want to imagine it to be a light from the window. I'm just playing with the settings, the intensity of the light, and I'm just pressing one digit, right? Like 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2. I don't like to press 1 and 0, 0 because I know then my hand has to travel through the whole keyboard to do that. I can switch point light to area light to give a broader highlight on the back, create a rim light coming from the back. And then to fake our global illumination from the room, I need to create another light. So this one will be coming from the front, and it will be much duller. And then I do want extra stuff on the face, so I can just bring that point light that was created by default with the scene. I'll just shift right click on the body and then shift S selection to cursor. It will jump over to the 3D cursor which I placed. Put it on the face. Obviously right now way too strong. 11 actually is pretty good. The lights are all very white. We do want to make them a little bit like yellowish pink to mimic that we have in the room. Same thing goes to the front light, front big light. We go and do this pinkish light. And also change the backlight as well. You can also use the color picker and pick from behind. Picks this kind of beige coloring. Looks like exactly what we need. Now I want to create a shadow catcher. So create a plane first, make it rather big. It's about right positioning, and go into shading and assign a new material. I don't really need this principal BSDF here. I click delete, and then we'll look for diffuse BSDF without any extra information. That doesn't mean we don't need. Then transparent BSDF. And we want to mix these two together. I will go with mix shader. I'll plug it into the surface, and transparent goes to the first one, and diffuse goes to the second one. So we have two of them mixing together. If I go and put the effect at 0, it will be fully transparent. If I go put the effect at 1, it will be a fully diffuse color. Now I want to create a mask for our shadow. I'll create another diffuse BSDF, then shade it to RGB. Let's connect these two together and plug it into our factor node. And then if I just change little settings here, I'm in the materials settings on the right, and I need to change random material from random method from DThat to blended. That gets us our shadow, but it looks like we probably need to invert this. All right, you know what? We have to switch the inputs, and there we go. I can go up and down, and I have my shadow. I want to address the blackness of the plane. So my mask here is not actually white, so I need to make it really white. That will lighten this up. We do, however, have this particular edge right there. So that edge, it's tricky to remove because the geometry there, if I start to push this plane down, it starts to hit the geometry that's down there. What I want to do, I will just go R and press X for the X axis. I'll just rotate it a little bit. I'm pressing Shift to slightly move this. Shift to slight move. And then we get a bit of intersection there. Okay, R, X, Shift move a little bit. And I guess we're getting less of it. I can also type in the values, but I'll try to, I want to do it. I want to eyeball it. Another thing I can do, I can try to play with the positioning of this light. And this is my main light. Well, main light source, so I can just go and start moving it around. And you can see we're losing some of that gradient. Maybe I will bring it more, say, up front or actually more behind. So now the gradient there is much less visible. Let me lighten up here. One thing I'm seeing right now, I'm making the shadow too bright. To help with that, we need to start using light linking. This is a new feature of 4.3, Blender 4.3. I just need to go into object settings and go into shading and into light linking and click new. And then I want to drag my plane, my shadow catcher inside and just unclick it. My plane is no longer affected by this light. I can also do the same thing for this, for the point light that is hitting the face. I will go into shading, light linking, create new and drag and drop that plane again and unclick it. So now our shadow is much darker. It's a little bit of a trick, but a lot of this trickery is very common in production, where people hide stuff or in every possible way they can. Another way to affect the shadows is to change the global environment. So I want to go into the world and switch from gray to slightly darker color. You can go, if I go full black, we're no longer receiving any kind of global illumination coming from the gray background. And if I make it white, everything starts to light up too much. I also want to make this, color a little bit more brownish to match up with the background of the room. It's about right. Can make it a bit darker. I want to introduce a bit of bloom to the scene, and in Blender 4.3 to change the bloom from being very simple to a bit more complicated setup. So I'm going back into Compositing tab. I don't need I need my viewer, but I don't need my map range or depth channel. I'll press spacebar and I'll look for the glare node. And by the way, I have this render in the background because I've just pressed to render at the top. I introduced this render. Then I will go and connect the image there to image, and then to the viewer node, and then to final composite node. Then I want to just go and drag from the left and split the screen and go click at the corner, 3D viewport. Let's just do a little preview of the bloom. So right now we don't have any bloom preview, but if I click right here in shading, I can go and say always. So that compositor will start to activate inside my scene. So whatever I do here, it will be visible in the scene. Then I can start to go, first of all, I need to change this tricks type to bloom, and then I can start to play these the options. So I can just drop down the threshold and it starts to lighten everything up. What I like about it that we actually also getting our AI render to give some bloom, and that adds up a bit of that 3D dimensionality and a bit of immersiveness, the whole render. And I can go and decrease or increase. This is up to you how strong you want to make it. Another little color tweak I want to add, I will go into Shading tab and look for brightness and contrast. You can just type in contrast, position it in between, and then I'll increase the brightness and decrease contrast, or maybe the vice versa. So I want to have less of a contrast to achieve a softer look of the model. And if I press M on the node, it will mute it, and I can see the difference before and after. So it just adds a bit of that washed out coloring as per the background. Let's do the animation. I'll click to show the overlays, click on my camera, and I do want to split my screen, drag down that part, and I'll press now 0 to jump to my camera preview, and I want to lock my camera lock to view. Then I want to activate a live keyframe. So every time I move the camera now, it will create a keyframe for it. Press G, move it, and it creates a keyframe. So then I will go jump to say keyframe 60 and move our camera right to the face of this character. And I can rotate it a little bit as well. So we didn't key the rotation before, so that's a little bit annoying. What I want to do is right-click insert keyframe to key the rotation, then jump back to the 60s position, and I can just press Shift and drag this to the left and change it like that. I think I might be interested in changing the focal length as well. Let's play with that. So I will introduce a keyframe just by clicking over there and go to frame 60, click here, and maybe say I'll go into more of a portrait lens. I want to zoom in right on this guy, right on his face. In portrait lens mode, usually what's going to happen, you'll get a blurred background. So I want to introduce depth of field, and I will focus on an object. So I'll just pick this guy and we can play with the amount of f-stop. It's not really focusing that well, so I can just drop my object and only do the focusing distance. So I can drop it down to 0.1 and pressing Shift and trying to get that focus. There we go. If I zoom back in, everything is blurred out. So I want to also keyframe the focus distance. Let's put it here to something a bit more normal, like say 2 meters. All right. And let's just play this animation. I will limit it to 60 frames because we only have a short fly through. And it might be even a little bit too fast. I just need to pick that keyframe and drag it all the way to 250 if I want to make it to run slower. I've forgotten to activate composited view, so now it's much brighter image. Let's see if it's not too bright. Looks a little bit like we have almost too much glare here. So we'll go into compositing and I can play with the threshold or size of this blurriness, the bloom. Let's hope this is better. That's pretty good. I think it's a bit too much of the light in front of the face, so I'll pick the light responsible for that brightness and I'll just go and drop it a bit down. So a bit more natural lighting now. To fill this window, I have to kind of go and push it up to join the areas. There we go. Have full screen preview. Normally I would run a couple of monitors and have it on my second screen. It's much easier to deal with that on multiple screens. Now let's talk about the output. We can output as a PNG sequence, but for the sake of time, I'll rather just go with MPEG export as a video. And here you just need to pick the folder to export this. I got my folder and then I will go and say render animation. Just make sure you save before rendering. And this is our full animation. There is another variation. Now it's an Egyptian themed room with the prop I've downloaded from Sketchfab. Or a different time period, in this case, using another simple prop in the middle. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this course and learned something new here.